In this video, we're going to look at factoring a trinomial by grouping. In 1, it says, note that x squared plus 7x plus 12 is equal to x squared plus 4x plus 3x plus 12. And what we've done is we've taken our center term, our 7x, and we've split it up to 4x plus 3x. And this is going to allow us to factor by grouping of a trinomial. In A, it says, how does the constant term 12 relate to the coefficients of x, 3, and 4? And if we had 3 times 4, that's equal to 12. So the product of 3 and 4 is equal to 12. And in B, it wants us to factor x squared plus 4x plus 3x plus 12 by grouping. And we could say that this is equal to, in our first two terms, we could factor an x out. So we have x, and we're left with x plus 4. And in our second two terms, we can factor out a 3, and we're left with x plus 4. And then we can factor out an x plus 4 binomial, and we're left with x plus 3. So x squared plus 7x plus 12 factors to x plus 4 times x plus 3. In 2, factors of 48 are listed below, and they want us to use this list to factor the trinomial below. So in our factors, we have 1 and 48, 2 and 24, 3 and 16, 4 and 12, and 6 and 8. And then it says find two integers that multiply to 48 and add to 19. And our two integers, our factors above that multiply together to 48 and add to 19, are going to be 3 and 16. So now we want to rewrite our polynomial with the middle term split. So we're going to say that we have x squared plus 3x plus 16x plus 48. And now we want to factor by grouping. So in the first two terms, I can factor out an x, and I'm left with x plus 3, plus, in the second two terms, I can factor out a 16, and I get x plus 3. And now when I factor out the binomial x plus 3, I have x plus 3 times x plus 16. And now they want us to check. So if we multiply the two binomials together using FOIL, we get x squared plus 16x plus 3x plus 48. And now I'm going to combine my like terms, so I get x squared plus 19x plus 48. And that's the polynomial that we started off with. In B, we have x squared plus 13x minus 48. So we need to find two integers that multiply together to get negative 48 and add together to get 13. And again, we're going to use the 3 and the 16 factors, but this time we're going to use negative 3 because 16 minus 3 is 13. So we have negative 3 and 16. And now we want to rewrite the middle terms, and I'm going to rewrite it as x squared plus 16x minus 3x minus 48. And now I'm going to factor an x out of my first two terms, and I'm left with x plus 16. And out of my second two terms, I'm going to factor out a negative 3, and then I have x plus 16. And when I factor out x plus 16 binomial, I'm left with x minus 3. And now we want to check, so we're going to multiply this back out, and we get x squared minus 3x plus 16x minus 48. And when we combine our middle terms, we get x squared plus 13x minus 48. In C, we have x squared minus 13x minus 48, and we need to find two integers that multiply to negative 48 and add to negative 13. And again, we're going to use the factors of 3 and 16, but this time our 16 is going to be negative, so we're going to have 3 and negative 16. And now we want to rewrite the middle term. So I'm going to have x squared minus 16x plus 3x minus 48. And when we factor by grouping, the first two terms we can factor out an x, and we have x minus 16. In the second two terms, I'm going to factor out a 3, and I'm left with x minus 16. And when we factor out an x minus 16, we have x minus 16 times x plus 3. And now we're going to multiply it back out. So I have x squared plus 3x minus 16x minus 48. And now we're going to combine our middle two terms, and we have x squared minus 13x minus 48. In D, we have x squared minus 16x plus 48, and we need to find two integers that multiply together to 48 and add together to negative 16. So we're going to use negative 12 and negative 4. And when we rewrite the middle term, we're going to have x squared minus 4x minus 12x plus 48. And when we factor an x out of the first two terms, we're left with x minus 4. And out of the second two terms, we want to factor a negative 12 out. So we have negative 12, and we're left with x minus 4. And when we factor out the x minus 4 binomial, we're left with x minus 12. And now let's multiply it together to check to make sure we get back to the same polynomial. So we have x squared minus 12x minus 4x plus 48. And when we combine our like terms, we get x squared minus 16x plus 48. In 3, it wants us to fill in the signs in each factor, then check. So we have in A, x squared plus 7x plus 6. So we need two numbers that multiply together to give us 6 and add together to give us 7. And they've already told us that the numbers are going to be 1 and 6. And because we have a positive 7, we have 6 plus 1. So we're going to have plus and plus. And positive 1 times positive 6 is 6. And 1 plus 6 is equal to 7. And now we want to multiply it out to make sure that we get back to the same polynomial that we started with. So we have x squared plus 6x plus x plus 6, and that's equal to x squared plus 7x plus 6, and we got back to what we started with. In B, we have x squared minus 7x plus 6, so now we need the two numbers to multiply together to positive 6, but we need negative 7 when we add them. So they're both going to be negative. Negative 1 minus 6 is 7, and negative 1 times negative 6 is 6. So now when we FOIL this out, we get x squared minus 6x minus x plus 6, and that's equal to x squared minus 7x plus 6. In C, we have x squared plus 5x minus 6. So we need the two numbers to multiply together to a negative number, and we need them to add to a positive number. So we're going to have one positive value and one negative value. Whenever your last term is negative, you'll have one positive binomial and one negative binomial. And in this case, we need the bigger number to be positive because we're positive in our middle term. So 6 is our bigger number. It becomes positive, and 1 becomes negative. So we have x squared plus 6x minus x minus 6, and that's equal to x squared plus 5x minus 6. And in D, we have x squared minus 5x minus 6, and we have a negative number for our final term, so one's going to be negative and one positive, and our middle term is negative, so the bigger number has to be negative. So 6 is negative and 1 is positive, and that gives us x squared minus 6x plus x minus 6, and that's equal to x squared minus 5x minus 6. So in 4 it says, given the trinomial x squared plus bx plus c is equal to, circle the response which makes the statement true. In A, if b is positive and c is positive, then the signs in the binomials are both positive or negative. And you can see from 3a that we had that both b and c were positive, and our signs were positive and positive, so they're both going to be positive. In B, it says if b is negative and c is positive, then the signs in the binomial are both positive or negative. And we can see in 3b that our b is negative and c is positive, and we had two negative signs in our binomial. In C, it says if c is negative, then the signs in the binomials are the same or different. So if we look above in 3C and D, where C was negative, we can see that the signs were different in our binomials for both C and D. And that's our video on factoring a trinomial by grouping, part 1.